The 17th round of the 2003 Champ Car season took place in a country that used footage of drug addicts 5 miles away from my house and an anti-drug PSA, Mexico. Specifically, the Champ Cars were running at Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez. Much like last week where there's a lot of storylines to touch on before the start, we have a lot to cover again, this time with some driver shuffles. Before finishing second in Miami, it was already announced that Roberto Moreno would not be driving in Mexico City, with his seat being given to Roberto Gonzalez. Gonzalez had actually already raced this season at the season opener in St. Pete. A fact you may not know even after watching this whole series because I misspoke and called him Walter Salas when I made that St. Pete video back in July. In my defense, I recorded that voiceover in a blind panic about a half an hour before a broadcast and 15 hours before I had to catch a train to go to Baltimore. There's another new driver this weekend, however one that wasn't replacing anybody. Luis Diaz was entered in a third Walker Racing car, meaning for the first time this season we had more than 19 cars. Older fans of this channel may remember Diaz from a video I made about his Champ Car career back in the summer of 2022. The fact that video is coming up on 2 years old truly is terrifying. In terms of the on-track stories, the biggest was a championship fight. Paul Tracy was in the lead, 14 points ahead of Junqueira. It was looking good for PT, as he would take the pole position for this race. The Newman Haas duo of Bruno Junqueira and Sebastian Bourdais would occupy the second row. Joining Tracy on the front row would be Thiago Montero, piloting a Reynard which were surprisingly quick this weekend. Even still, that is a very impressive performance, especially one coming from a driver who has had a truly awful season to this point. Jeff Boss would be your 20th and last place starter. With a very abridged pre-race show on the broadcast, and a rambling one on this video, we can get to the start of the race. Well, scrap that because basically nobody got lined up and the start was waved off. It's gonna be one of those days, isn't it? Well, take two this time around, we'd actually grab the green. The green flag would fly with a fantastic start as Bruno Junqueira giving an unsuccessful challenge to Paul Tracy. Meanwhile, farther behind, all hell broke loose with multiple cars spinning and hitting each other, and Adrian Fernandez going for some rally action through the gravel. One of the cars involved was Michel Jourdain Jr., who is now on the back foot if he wants to stay in the championship fight. Speed Channel would then miss the ensuing restart on lap 4. I guess if people running the broadcast just thought, well, that's for our commercial break anyways. Sure, there's no cars to recover and the green flag will probably be out by the time we come back, but we gotta make our money somehow. Don't ask me how I pulled a Marvin the Martian voice out of my ass, I don't know either. We're 17 episodes in, folks. I think this series has officially made me insane. Getting back to the restart, Paul Tracy started gapping the field almost immediately. The action was towards the back of this stage, as Adrian Fernandez went for a kamikaze move on Walter Salas, locking up and sending the both of them off the track. Jeff Boss behind them saw this and got spooked into taking the turn 1 runoff area, but in trying to get turned around, he stalled it. After multiple laps of the safety crews trying to get him refired, they eventually just gave up and pulled him behind the wall. The race at this stage was really boring, so allow me, if you would, to draw your attention to Sebastian Bourdais' car. You may notice that's a really ugly green. Well, this weekend he was sponsored by, as what the broadcast called it, an Eli Lilly medication yet to be approved in America. It was Cialis, which for those in my audience who aren't aware, is erectile dysfunction medication. I don't have anything else to say about that. I just saw this as an excuse to say erectile dysfunction in a video. Actually, no, as I wrote that part of the video, they described the color as frog green, which now makes me think Cialis should have used this marketing slogan for the weekend. Cialis. Care to have a frog in your throat? I'm such a child. Around lap 12, the great run that Luis Diaz was having ended in similar fashion to his race here last year, as his engine blew up and he was forced to pull off the track. If he were sponsored by Cialis, I'd say he pulled out. It's at times like these where I wonder why 3,000 people decide to subscribe to me. On lap 19, the pit stops came, and it was pretty close between the two Newman Haas cars, with Bourdais and his team working hard to try and extend in front of his teammate. Even though Junqueira was in the championship fight, Bourdais was in a fight of his own to get the Rookie of the Year award. Considering his sponsor and the fact he had a great chance to lock it up this weekend, a fitting celebration would be erecting a statue. The troubles for Walker Racing continued, as Rodolfo Levin pulled off the track with a broken gearbox. Certainly a driver not having any issues was Paul Tracy, with his gap growing to over 10 seconds. And with that, I've officially run out of things to talk about and dick jokes, so let's take a break from solely talking about the racing. I have a bit of a bone to pick about the branding around IndyCar tracks these days. In this race, you've got massive inflatable advertisements on the side of the track. Now remind me again, why do we get rid of those? Think about it, could kill two birds with one stone. Not only is it eye-catching advertisement that I think could still work today, if the race is really boring, you could cut the straps holding it down, let it float onto the track and throw the yellow. Can you tell that's what I wish would happen in this race. I can't be too upset, we had a great race last week, so it was inevitable that this race was going to be a bit boring in comparison, rule of averages and all that, but seriously, I just won more than 5 good races for the love of all that's holy. The next series of pit stops came around, with the front runners pulling in on lap 39. Because of this series of stops, Bourdais would jump ahead of his teammate. Then not too long after this, the race finally got a shot in the arm. Jimmy Vasser went for a kamikaze dive into turn 1, taking himself and Alex Tagliani out of the race. That move just about summarizes Jimmy Vasser's racing career since 1998. After a few laps under yellow, the race was back underway on lap 46, and while everyone's attention was put on Tracy and Bourdais, the real fight was between Montero and Junqueira, with Montero getting the move done. But as that was going on, there was some drama farther behind, as Darren Manning and Roberto Gonzalez had a muzzle which brought the yellow back out. Both of them would continue on with little to no damage. The lap 49 restart was far less exciting than the last one, with the order remaining very much the same. The shuffles came as the field started the final pit sequence. One casualty came from this, as Walter Salas pulled in and retired from the race with gearbox issues. About 5 laps later was when the front runners came in. Tracy and his team got the job done to escape the pits ahead of Bourdais. Thiago Montero's team wouldn't, as he dropped back like a rock after a slow stop. All of this chaos gave the lead to Adrian Fernandez, who was off sequence and finally pitted after 6 laps spent in the lead. As that was going on, Junqueira was really struggling, falling down to 8th on pace alone, net 7th after Fernandez's pit stop. Fernandez's race soon got even worse, as after a stop he punted Oriol Servia into a spin, marking Adrian's 5th crash of the day. The spotty chaos continued, as Patrick Carpentier would run out of gas in the dying laps of the race. But for his teammate Tracy, it was a blowout. After leading 64 laps on the day, Tracy would cross the line to score the win at the 2003 Gran Premio Telmex, taking his 7th victory of the year. Sebastian Bourdais would finish in 2nd to clinch the Jim Truman Rookie of the Year award, and Mario Dominguez would finish in 3rd to score a fantastic podium, celebrating like he had won the championship. One driver that certainly wasn't feeling like a champion was Bruno Junqueira, as his 7th place run was a pitiful result to get in a race where Tracy scored nearly the maximum amount of points you could. Tracy was now in the lead of the championship by 29 points. With a maximum of 23 points available in any given weekend, Tracy now had the chance to clinch his first ever Champ Car championship at Surfers Paradise. That wasn't a good race, don't get me wrong, but it's honestly quite mid-range for this season. It could also have something to do with the fact that I only have 2 more races left to cover this season, so seeing the end being so close makes the pain hurt less. Or maybe it's the fact that this race felt like a buzz by pretty quickly. The Miami race footage is about an hour longer than this race, mainly because that was a satellite feed version of the race that had them talking during the commercial breaks, and even filming stuff at the end. This meanwhile was about an hour and a half. Pretty straightforward, but also a bit boring. Also, a quick little note, I'm recording this part of the voiceover at 7:27 p.m. on Sunday, December 31st, so this is officially my last voiceover from 2023. It's only interesting for myself and maybe 5 viewers, but I felt like pointing it out regardless. Next up on the calendar is Surfers Paradise, where we could see the crowning of a new champion. I hope to see you all for that video in 1 week's time. Thank you all for watching, and have a great afternoon.